Arweave DevTools. So to get started with Arweave as a developer, here's 5 basic tools that will help you in this process. Um, AR Local is a way to use Arweave on your local machine. So when you run that, it runs as a node in the Arweave ecosystem and listens on port 1984. And then we can use the Arweave JS SDK to connect to it. And you know, it works great, and it does everything that the Arweave mainnet does. But you're not having to spend AR on it. You can mint, create a wallet, mint some AR on the AR local, and then build your app to interact with that. So that's really cool. Um, Arweave JS is a JavaScript library that gives you the ability to work with the Arweave JSON RPC in a more nice syntax or more JavaScripty approach. And also, it gives you the ability to send GraphQL requests to Arweave and find transactions on the Arweave network. It's kind of the core library that we'll be using for our app. And yeah, I think you'll find that it's very easy and nice to use. The other two technologies is Arweave Wallet Connector, which is a module that connects to the Arweave.app wallet. The Arweave.app wallet is a browser-based wallet that holds your tokens and really acts as the authentication mechanism to connect and submit transactions on behalf of the user through your application. Um, so it's really simple. We'll use one method in it, which is to connect, and then it will integrate nicely with the Arweave SDK to use that interaction for signing and sending transactions to the Blockweave. R Connect is another wallet. This wallet is a browser-based extension, and when you have R Connect installed in your browser, our DApp 8-pin can detect that and actually call the connect function. And it's actually RConnect injects this Arweave wallet module into the browser API so we can interact through that. Finally, the last tool that we'll work with in this tutorial is RKB. RKB is a command line application that allows you to publish your actual application onto the Arweave network itself, and therefore creating a fully decentralized application. In other words, everything is from front to back, all running on Arweave. The app, the data, everything. So it gives you just a nice command line tool to publish your web application to the Permaweb. The Permaweb is the term we use to define the Arweave kind of web server delivery system. And that's what we'll do. We'll publish our web app on the Permaweb and we'll be good to go. Cool. So let's set up AR local, and we'll set that up by installing it. So the first thing we'll do is come over here into our um, Visual Studio Code, and we'll just run, um, based on the tutorial, we'll just run npx AR local. So npx AR local will essentially install and spin up the server. If you already have it installed, then it'll just spin it up. So you can see that we've got it started on port 1984. And I'm going to go into my console here and I'm going to make sure that's public. And then we can open it up as a tab and see that we've got AR local running. And yeah, so easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So the next thing we want to do is we want to actually add some data that we've got kind of queued up, some pins, a couple of pins, and we can do that by just running yarn load data. So I'm going to open up a new terminal. I'm going to change the um, prompt here because I like to keep it nice and clean. And we're going to run yarn load data. But first thing I'm gonna run yarn to make sure that we've installed everything, and then yarn load data. Uh, And we're uploading, we're essentially dropping two pins. We're uploading the images for both into our local environment. So if we go to that terminal, you can see that we've added those to our network. And we can also go and look um, at our browser and kind of look for the transaction. So um, we're gonna do that next, um, which is querying Arweave, right? So one of the coolest things about the Arweave network is the ability to use GraphQL. GraphQL is a great way to query APIs, and the network, just like many blockchain networks, you have transactions and you have blocks, and each block has a bunch of transactions. Um, all these transactions, though, they can have data, they can have a target and a quantity to transfer AR from one wallet to another. And they can also have tags. And these tags uh, become attributes that allow us to query. And you can access it. So we can access the GraphQL by just using /GraphQL on our AR local server. And then, if you're in on the main net, you can do the same thing, just /GraphQL, and it's going to load up a graphical environment that'll allow us to write transactions. And what we'll do is create a query. And if we just open this up, we can see that we have really four um, types of queries we can do. We can do a query on transaction or transactions, block or blocks. So we're going to query transactions. So we want to get a list of transactions, right? And what we want to do is get their edges, and we want to get a node and then an ID. So this is a basic query that we're going to use. And when we run this, we get two transactions. We get the first transaction that we entered in our load data and the second transaction. Now, we can get more information than just the ID. We can get the owner and their address, right? And that'll give us the owner and address. And we can also get all the tags. So we can say tags and name and value. And that'll give us all the tags for each item. And you may look at these tags, and the name kind of represents a column, and the value kind of represents the cell if you think of a database. So these tags up to 248 bytes, we can store searchable information on these tags. So, for example, if I wanted to write a query that finds all the transactions that are part of the protocol 8 pin, I would just go into my input criteria and I would say tags, and then I would go name equals, I'm going to add a colon here, equals, let's see, what's that curly braces saying? Yeah, okay. So name equals protocol and values equals 8 pin. And by adding this input criteria, I have filtered my result set to return all transactions where there are tags, where there's a tag with the name protocol and the values contain 8 pin. And this is really, really powerful stuff. So we can also, you know, filter all the transactions by owner address. So we could say owners and give me all the transactions that were created by this owner. We can also say, give me all the transactions, or give me the first two or first one transaction, right? So we can use first and say one, and it's going to give us the first one. It doesn't give us a second one. Um, or we could say first 100. Now, a note to remember is that with the mainnet, the maximum records you can return in one request is 100. So if you have more, you'll need to implement a pagination routine to go and get the rest. Um, so then we could say, you know, and we can combine these to filter even more. So we can say, give us the first 100 and tags, name, protocol, and values 8 pin. So that's kind of a quick intro to GraphQL. The one thing that you can't get from the transaction is actually the data. So behind each one of these, and if we, you know, grab this ID and we go to our local environment, or AR local, and then we say slash and the transaction ID, you can see that the content, the data, is an image. Now, we can't pull that through GraphQL, so we have to make an extra call to get the data by using the name of the Arweave server slash and then the transaction ID. And what's cool about Arweave is because we've set this tag content type and gave it a MIME type, the server, the Arweave server, will actually figure out, okay, this data is an image, so I'm going to stream it to the browser as an image, which is really, really neat. So if you had content type HTML and your data was HTML, it's going to stream it as a website, and that's what really kind of makes the Permaweb work, which is really, really cool.